Naile from the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. The Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers is an advocacy group for smaller government and the protection of citizens' rights. Ed holds voter fraud workshops throughout the state, presumably against voter fraud, and is here tonight to talk to us about voter fraud in New Hampshire. Please welcome Ed Naile.
Little assistants handing these out. Oh, it happens every time.
Yep. Twice tonight. So.
Somebody on that side. There we go. I got a hammer. All right, I'm going to hand these voter fraud exhibits out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through what the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers has found through our 10 years or more of investigations into voter fraud. We started back in 2000, right after the state had purged its voters list. Unknowingly, we just picked that year to start because so many people had come to us and said, voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud. So we convened a meeting down in Concord, and we started to collect what was coming in from the various towns. And if somebody saw something, bring us evidence, something tangible, some testimony, some, if we have to, but documents would be nice, photographs, things like that. There was about 6 or 8 of us down in Concord. Joan Fulton, who's sitting in the back, I think Joan might have been there. But we started on this, and we eliminated a lot of the nonsense, and I think we got some good stuff. So when everybody has a copy, I'll quickly zip through this, and then we'll talk about why we need a new governor and a new attorney general. I think it'll be pretty apparent. Page 1. This is the first page when you flip over. In the little cover sheet, this is 3 of about 20-some letters that came back in the town of Deerfield. These people registered same day in 1996. The 2000 purge caught these letters in Deerfield. You'll notice that each person voted from 159 Bear Brook Road. Christine Kelly, Meredith Benson, Joe Gallagher. There were about 24 of them. There is no Bear Brook Road in Deerfield, so there is no 159. But each one of these people walked in knowingly, went up to an official in Deerfield and said, hi, here's my driver's license. I'd like to register same day. And right here on the next page is their same day registrations showing they're from Indiana, Massachusetts, so everywhere but New Hampshire. And we matched all these up. These were all turned into the AG's office when they were discovered. Nothing ever came of that. But Harriet Cady found these. She lives in Deerfield. She knows she's an activist. And not much gets past Harriet. So she turned these over to us. I believe I have the originals squirreled away in our office. But this is pay close attention to these same-day registration forms you see here on page 2 from the people from AmeriCorps who were bussed into Deerfield to vote. Okay? Because what I did was I took these names and put them on the internet and called them all kinds of various things, vote thieves, lowlifes, and some of them were dumb enough to respond to me through email. So I said, gee, have your dad's attorney call me. I'm easy to get a hold of. 61 Tubbs Hill Road, Deering, New Hampshire. You can sue me, and then we'll go through this thing called discovery, and we'll find out whether or not you ever were a resident and lived on an imaginary road in an imaginary address when you lied to public officials. No one has had their daddy sue me yet. So this is welcome the Democrats to almost total control of New Hampshire in 2006, 2008. This is what they did to your same-day registration form. When I asked for a same-day registration form to see where these people came from, this is what I see now, nothing. The same-day registration forms have been limited to the person's name. They used a Massachusetts driver's license. There is the party, no signature. I can no longer match a signature, a birth date, or where they came from, which is very important because we used to do that. We'd say, you came in here, you came in here, and you registered same day from, let's say, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, 2 years ago. Now, you voted, and 2 years later, you've been arrested in Durham for internal possession or riot. That's the arrested people in the hockey riots back in 2003 in Durham. We collect all that stuff. So if you think you're a college student or somebody who's going to get away with something, I got almost everything. So we track that. So 2 years later, you get arrested and you hand a Durham officer your driver's license from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So are you a citizen of New Hampshire? No, you've sworn to New Jersey that you're a resident there. That's why your driver's license says New Jersey on it. I drive a truck, and if I was to give my driver's license to a state trooper or the Department of Safety and said, oh, here's my driver's license, it says New Hampshire on it, CDL, I really live in New Jersey. Yeah, they wouldn't think that was very funny. I'd leave in handcuffs, the truck would sit there, it would be impounded. Well, that's what I think we should do with people from out of state who come here and register same day and never become a citizen. You want to come here as a college student and vote? Fine. Become a citizen. We had this issue with a young lady up in North who became a county treasurer. Remember that? But she actually lived, I think, in Colorado and wasn't around for her duties and eventually had to abandon the post. Looks real good on your resume that you were a county treasurer at one time in New Hampshire, because the college towns register up there, register more students same day than live in the surrounding communities that are tied to them. So next one here is, now that was reported, we always report to the AG's office and the Secretary of State, and you get that puzzled look from Bill Gardner. We call this next one, see the photographs? We call this the lump at the dump. This is the Bedford School District clerk, and he is sitting at a card table handing out absentee ballots to encourage more people to vote for a school bond, which our taxpayers group was helping the Bedford Taxpayers group oppose. So our idea was, since this is like their second or third special meeting, why don't we try something novel? That's what we do at CNHT, Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Try something outside the box. To get a special meeting without court approval in the state of New Hampshire, over 50% of the voters in the last election have to show up. So we had a let's not vote campaign going on. All right? Don't show up, don't vote, you won't get the 50%, the court won't allow the bond. That's so sweet. You don't have to go to court for anything. They don't get the 50%, we win. So the lump at the dump shows up, and he's got absentee ballots at the dump. He's handing them out. That's against the law. And what else does he have here, which I showed to Bud Fitch at the Attorney General's office. So he has a sign that says, vote today, 9 to 3. Sounds like a polling station, doesn't it? Okay, that's what I thought, reading the sign. So I asked Bud Fitch at the AG's office, what does the sign say? He doesn't know. Well, that's an illegal polling station. It violates maybe 20 different statutes. You have to have a police officer. You have to advertise the hours in the paper. It has to be a legitimate polling station. It has to have a rail. It has to have officials there. It has to open and close and use pencils and screens. And not a card table at the transfer station, okay? So here's the most important thing. Absentee ballots in a school election are handled by the town clerk, not the lump at the dump. Okay, we could have bagged him on that. The AG's office said, well, it was highly unusual but not illegal. The next one you may have heard of, this is the complaint by the Republican Party to the AG's office of a young man named Jeff Witrowski, who came to help Mayor for Life Bob Baines get reelected the last time before Mayor Ginta kicked him to the curb. Mayor Baines was at the time one of the highest elected Democrats in the state. And we had a presidential election coming up, and apparently John Kerry paid to have this guy come to New Hampshire. So Jeff Witrowski, a professional campaigner who's been in campaigns all over the country, comes to New Hampshire, and he's running the Mayor Baines campaign out of Kathy Sullivan's house. Now, he's got an office, but he's living at Kathy Sullivan's home on Mammoth Road. So that's what he put down. If you look on the next page, that's what he put down when he voted here. This is our new HAVA system to prevent voter fraud. You see this list of names? You'll see Jeff Witrowski, his middle name is Clinton, surprise, 192 South Mammoth Road. Okay, now here's why we don't prosecute voter fraud. This is called a sticky wicket. If you were to arrest a college student who voted illegally, and you can prove it, we have confessions, I'll show you them later on. That college student might say, well, the professor told me I could. Or these people rounded up 20 of us. Okay? That's what discovery would find. If the police investigated, it would find the same professors from the same colleges, round up these poor kids and get them to vote over and over and over again. I'm not after college students. I'm after the professionals and the paid public employees who round up college students and get them to steal my vote and your vote. Okay? The Republican Party complained about Mr. Witrowski. He was out stealing signs from the Ginta campaign and stealing signs from the Republican Party. When the Republicans, two of them, started chasing him, Mike Biondo was one of them, name sound familiar? Mike and another fellow, B.J. Perry, chased him to Kathy Sullivan's house. The police came in, oh, bang, lights come on. I guess a motel, what do you call that when you rent out your apartments to people from out of state? What do you call that, Kathy Sullivan's? I thought it was a residential home, but apparently it's some sort of a revolving door place for out-of-state vote thieves. But so they turn on the lights, they come out, open the trunk, there's the signs, right? That's I believe it's a misdemeanor. You can be arrested for this or even charged, right? So he begs the police, Manchester police, oh, please don't arrest me. I'm going back to South Dakota. Oh, please. He's got South Dakota plates, South Dakota driver's license. He knows the law. He knows the law. Jeff Wachowski's no idiot. So they say, okay, fine. They let him go. Off he goes. And the Republican Party complained. We found out that he had voted here. Man, why don't you arrest this guy? Right? The AG's office wouldn't do it. The Manchester police wouldn't do it, and our laws allow for the AG to do it if the local police won't. And I think that's a good law, because local police shouldn't always be drug into these political issues. You know, I was a former selectman. I helped get the 3 selectmen before me and a road agent arrested. So when I got elected, they tried to do the same for me, and I wouldn't want the police to be involved in that. So that makes sense to have the AG handle it. The AG didn't handle this, okay? So we have Wachowski wanders off, and we still stalk him through the internet. We try and find other campaigns he's on and mail ahead like we do with school superintendents and city managers that leave our state. We don't ever let them go. But in that situation right there, let's say Mr. Wachowski gets arrested. Mr. Wachowski, what did you use for a home? What would you use for an address? Did you have a, what do they call it, an electric bill from there or a rent receipt? And who was paying Kathy Sullivan to let you live there? Is that a unrecorded campaign donation? You see how much fun it would be if the Attorney General's office actually investigated something? You could say, Kathy, how many people have come there and stayed at your place? So Jeff Wachowski, professional campaigner, moves on, goes back to South Dakota, and he becomes Hillary Clinton's campaign manager for that state. So 1 week before the South Dakota primary, which remember, Clinton v. Obama, that went on and on and on and on until South Dakota was actually important. So a talk radio program called up and said, hey, we were researching Jeff Wachowski and your name came up. Oh, I wrote things like he's a dirtball and a vote stealer and a liar and a lowlife. Yeah. She said, well, can you prove that? And I said, okay, you're going to receive a fax. You give me your fax number and I will send you. So I sent him everything. I sent Kathy Sullivan's assessment card and a schematic of her house. That's not an apartment. John Kerry is the guy that paid. Who's trading money for whom? And if you're going to run a campaign out in New Hampshire, how come you don't have an apartment of your own? John Kerry can't afford that, but he can afford to give Bob Baines, a professional campaigner. So Jeff Wachowski, smart camp, he spent the last week of Hillary's campaign answering to me over talk radio in South Dakota. That's called street justice, ladies and gentlemen. If that's all we get because we don't have an AG, that's what's going to have to do till we get a new governor and we get a new AG. This is what I like to call some sort of a confession, to whom it may concern. This is a letter to the supervisor of the checklist in Durham. This is real simple. Please take me off the Durham residency list. I registered to vote in Durham for the election, but I am not a resident here. Please like to return so I can change my residency back to Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. Thank you very much. Emily Martin. She gives her address and everything but a photograph. That's an in-state person. Remember, some of these people who get elected in certain college towns, they get elected no matter what because they have the college students to vote for them. Chuck Weed from Keene, the wacky left-wingers we get elected in Durham and Plymouth and towns like that. Here's one, the next one, page February 1, 2001. Dear Superintendent, I was one of 1,700 UNH students who wrongly registered to vote in Durham, New Hampshire. I was ready to have my name taken off the checklist since I already stole someone's vote. So that I would be able to properly register in my hometown of Beverly, Massachusetts, because I care about me more than anybody else. I am sorry for any inconvenience that I caused by registering in Durham. If you need any further information, feel free to contact me. And he left his number and everything. These are all public documents. These were part of an investigation that the AG's office did in 2001 after that election and never prosecuted anybody or did a damn thing about it. But we did manage to get that information. They left a time frame for prosecution lapse before it was released. Jack Barnes, Senator Jack Barnes, helped me get it through the AG's office. He called over there and said, I'm sending Mr. Naile over. He'll be there in like 3 minutes to pick it up. And I managed to get stacks of this stuff. Now this last one, This is, we all know about James O'Keefe, right? James O'Keefe came to New Hampshire. Well, James O'Keefe has people that work with him, and one of them went to a Raymond voter fraud workshop I did a year ago, which was apparently an inspiration for James O'Keefe coming to New Hampshire and doing the filming. So if you see him, you can ask him about that. So thank you very much, CNHT, for providing us. This is what we gave them, the same stuff you're getting. So now Mr. O'Keefe has exposed how easy it is to vote in New Hampshire under a deceased person's name. And what did they pick? Bedford is one of the towns where we know one of our directors had her deceased husband's name checked off when she went in to vote. So we actually know that's what happens there. Well, they went there and some other communities, and we've all seen the famous videotapes, I imagine, from O'Keefe. Now the shame of New Hampshire is the one guy that's really nationally exposing our lax system was threatened with a subpoena the last time he was supposed to appear in New Hampshire. So when I meet Mr. O'Keefe and his guys, I like to give them this. This is an AP story about 2006 election. State representative will fight affidavit rule. We have these things called affidavits you sign for same-day voter registration. Even though they've been stripped of anything at all, there is a perjury clause added to them saying, I signed this under threat of perjury. Well, to protect the state to protest the state-required affidavit that out-of-state college students must sign to vote in New Hampshire, Charles Weed, who's a professor at Keene State, has developed his own residency affidavit. You guys have all designed your own ballot stuff for your elections, right? You want to vote for Ovid, you just write up some ballots and bring them in with you, and they'll accept them. So 6 Keene State college students tried to use that affidavit in place of the official form at the polls in Keene's Ward 1 on Tuesday. Chuck Weed never got a subpoena to appear before anybody. They sent Bud Fitch out because one of my people was standing there when Bud Fitch from the AG's office showed up. And I believe what I was told, that Bud Fitch was told, hit the road, you're not going to do anything about this anyway. And you know what? Mr. Weed was correct. They were told their votes wouldn't be counted unless they signed the official form. Now, what would you call that? Is that attempted voter fraud? That's a protest? Let's weakly call it a protest. Well, what about Mr. O'Keefe? He was practicing journalism. But what does our Attorney General's office do in New Hampshire? Try and give that guy a hard time. Try and arrest him or subpoena him or get him before a grand jury. For what? Weed's still walking around. He's on the election law committee. Okay? Now, I went on the election law. I like to go to the election law committee. They don't exactly like to have me there. I went on a couple of years ago and handed this type of stuff out. And I said, my name's Ed Naile, chairman of the Coalition of Hampshire Taxpayers. I'm here to talk about voter fraud and why we need photo ID. And there's the panel sitting all around. And we started off. And I think Bill O'Brien was on election law at the time and Mike Biondo. So you can check with these guys to see if I'm telling you the truth. So I started to give my spiel and hand this stuff out. And a brand new college student state representative just elected named Stephanie C. Sinclair couldn't take it anymore and said, Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Naile a question? And Chairman said, go ahead. She said, Mr. Naile, would it surprise you to know that my car has Massachusetts plates? I said, wouldn't surprise me at all, Representative Sinclair, as long as your driver's license says New Hampshire. Her face turned white. She didn't show me her driver's license, and she resigned from this newly elected seat she took over. And she's a college student from Keene. She wins a seat, and she goes on election law. Right? So that's what I don't even testify. I don't even really go to these things anymore, and I don't have much to do with the elected officials. I'm counting on people like you to take this stuff and buttonhole your elected officials and say, we want photo ID. We want a governor that wants photo ID and won't veto it for the how many times? Gene Shaheen did it 2 or 3 times, and this guy's done it at least twice. In 2002, the Republican Party let me go to Hanover to be a challenger. It's my favorite statute, RSA 666. Guess who's here, right? So I go, and I had another guy with me, Joe Frazier, and another fella he hired, and the 3 of us went in. We had our credentials from Jim Dow, I think, was the chairman at the time, and I went in to meet the moderator. I introduced myself, say, here's my credentials. I am an official challenger on behalf of the Republican Party, and I walked up to the moderator, Mrs. Black, and she was in the process of talking with a young lady, a student. The young lady, walks up and says, are you the moderator? Yes. I'm standing right there. She doesn't know who I am yet. And she said, well, my driver's license says Wisconsin. My apartment is in Vermont, but I go to school here at Dartmouth. Can I vote here? And she says, sure you can. And off she goes. So I said, hello, Mrs. Black, moderator. I am Ed Naile from the Coalition of Hampshire Taxpayers, and you and I have a problem already because I'm a challenger with the Republican Party. And you just told that non-resident who confessed to you she doesn't live here or have a driver's license she could vote. She goes, well, that's my rules. So, okay, Moderator Black, we have some new rules. I'm going to challenge people like that starting right now. So Joe Frazier and I, they went outside, and apparently the news got out that I was in there, and I was alone at the time. They were outside, and some of the buses were turned around. They were telling kids, don't go. There's lawyers here. I'm a tree surgeon, okay? There's lawyers here. So the tree surgeon attorney, I went in, and I was watching people check, and I'd wait, and they'd come around to use their Pennsylvania driver's license. I go, challenge. So they had some Democrat attorneys came up. One was wearing a Shaheen sweatshirt, and they proceeded to with the moderator, and they said, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a table for the challenges, because then you have to sign a second affidavit. Then I have your signature twice. In the old days, that's all gone now. Thank you, Democrats. I would have your signature twice, and if I could bag you somewhere else for drunk driving or whatever, I get another signature, and then I can prove who you are, may or not are. So they had a conference, and they said, well, Mr. Naile, you and your guys are going to have to sit in those chairs, and you can't move. And I said, that's not what the law says. I'm allowed to observe, and my idea of observing is to be able to move around. You're to sit in those chairs and not move. I said, okay, that's the rules? That's the rules. I said, okay, here's my rules. We're going to go have lunch, we're going to come back, and we're going to challenge everybody. You can see all the air leave the room. Then we'll need more affidavits, won't we? I said, you better print up a big stack of them. We challenged 440 people. That kind of slowed things down a bit, right? So they had Channel 3 came by, some radio stations came by, and we had people swear at us. I almost challenged C. Everett Koop. He lives there. Do you know this guy with the sailor beard? I'll let him go. But we challenged like every other person. I had people come up, and I'd see maybe college student, maybe young person. I'd say challenge, and the one fellow says, oh, "What's that mean?" And he's handing the ballot to the ballot clerk. He says, "Well, this gentleman's challenging you. He's an observer from the Republican Party." He goes, "What's that mean?" He goes, "He's claiming you're not a resident." And the guy says, "But I'm not a resident." Off he goes. I had in the beginning, the students were using affidavits from the housing officer that they were residents of New Hampshire. No, you got housing on campus. That doesn't mean you're a resident of New Hampshire. I tried to get one of those by pretending I fell in their trash can. That didn't work. So we did grab as much of stuff as we could, and we kind of slowed things down. Well, they tried to pass a couple of statutes after that attacking me personally. So I forget the Pierce, I think is the state rep there. The last time I went to the election law committee hearing, he came in and he said, well, the reason I'm trying to pass this bill is because some lawyers from the Republican Party came up and they just ruined our election. And I'm sitting right behind the guy. He has no clue it's me. So it was my turn. I said, well, I'm the guy, and myself and Joe Frazier and this other guy, yes, we did do that because you had thousands of people registering same day with out-of-state licenses, and some of them had actually confessed they were not residents. So, I'm opposed to this bill. They didn't pass that one, but they have attempted to stifle challengers. So people say, what do you have new? In 2008, I was contacted by a prominent New Hampshire attorney and said, get yourself down to Durham right now. They won't let the Republican challengers anywhere near the registration tables. The law, and now we resolved this back in 2002. There's federal law, court cases over and over again, that a right to challenge is equal to your right to vote. Okay, so I'm on pretty solid ground if I want to go to court with them. So in 2008, I'm on my way down. I'm following all the Obama kids pulling off, knocking on doors, and rounding people up to vote. And I get to Durham, and they have a basketball court set up, and the Republicans are sitting in a couple of chairs way at the end of the court in the corner. That's where they're supposed to observe from, while thousands of people are registering to vote, the same like the 1,700 that they talked about are registering to vote. So I went in, I introduced myself to the moderator, I had a camera with me, a nice big telephoto lens, and the same thing was going on in Manchester, and Chuck Douglas took the state to court, and by like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, we had a reversal. So they had to let the Republicans challengers move up, and but most of it's done by then. But that's what goes on. Here we are, 2008, we're still trying to intimidate challengers and not welcoming them up. I've done this before, like in Goffstown at the Bartlett School. I walk in and say, hi, I'm an observer from the whatever campaign. Have a coffee, here's some cookies, walk around, introduce you to little old ladies. But in some towns, like Hanover and Dartmouth and Plymouth, it's not like that. It is a machine that grinds these college students into that polling booth to steal your vote, and we have to stop it with photo ID, we have to stop it with pressure on our officials, and we have to get a new governor who will bring the case himself, like I've heard earlier, or make sure we have an AG that does their job, because one or two prosecutions of this nonsense, and they see where it goes. I mean, Kathy Sullivan should still be spitting nickels over that, over keeping the Kerry guy in her house. You know, it was at a campaign donation. That's what they would do to you guys or any candidate in this room ad nauseum. So if you want to know what to do, I went to Manchester, Ward 3 in 2006. I was armed with the returns. Like, these are from, oh boy, Phyllis Woods. Phyllis Woods ran for office in her area. These are the returns of people who were on the list and no one's at the house. So if I have these, or you guys gather these up from your NA campaign, get your hands on the returns so we have something to challenge with. So when I was in Manchester, I was armed with a guy, one of the Free Staters, ran for selectman of Manchester and gave me the returns. So I'm sitting there, you know, as they come through. One gentleman, I have their names, guy comes up. I said, challenge. What's the matter? I said, challenge residency. He says, you're not a resident. He goes, and the guy just started walking backwards trying to get out of the building. He said, I live here. I just want to vote. I don't want to be harassed. And he's trying to get out. And I'm going, moderator, moderator. So the moderator comes over, and I said, just pop a driver's license. I'll withdraw my challenge. So he wouldn't do that because he didn't have one. I said, well, how do you get here? You didn't drive? Did you, hitchhike? How'd you get here? Where do you live? Because, it says here that you live on this street, but you're not there to answer your mail. So he made a little arrangement with the moderator. Moderator left him vote and took my complaint. That one and the other ones I filed for the other people I caught. I think there were 6 of them altogether. They're probably campaign workers. And we were very careful not to get the Pine Street crowd, people who are homeless. You can pretty much tell who that is. I didn't challenge any of those people. I challenged what I believe were campaign people or people who had left the state and come back. So my challenge was to the moderator. The moderator of Ward 3 is Ray Buckley's little sister. So that went nowhere. So, but I made those complaints. Now, if you look on the Secretary of State's office, they will brag about the investigations they do. You won't see any of the stuff that we have on the Secretary of State's office bragging about the investigations the Attorney General's office has done into same-day registration. You won't find that Dave Scott down in Dover spent like $1,000 tracking people down and caught Maine voters coming over and people you couldn't account for. That's not on there. The Chuck Weed thing isn't on there. So we run a scam here for our elections in New Hampshire. We don't deserve to have the primary unless we clean this up, because sooner or later somebody's going to figure this out. This is a mess. That's one of the main reasons people come to New Hampshire for the primary, because most of us know, like I heard Phil Gramm one time. Phil Gramm was a senator for Texas. I was talking to him. He goes, your people know the House bill number. Welcome to New Hampshire. HB 322. Why'd you Senate Bill 9? That's the way people in New Hampshire address elected officials or people, candidates who come here. We're very sophisticated. So many of us have been elected. So many have been in office. There's 235 towns. There's thousands of selectmen and school board members. We are the place. Why are we running crooked elections? So this is the tip of the iceberg. I can go on for hours about the stuff that's been done to us, and they've tried to intimidate us into stop doing this. We got more videos out all the time. There's one up from Hudson on YouTube, and we got one from a Manchester television show, Rock, Paper, Scissors, Hand Grenades, that Representative Gary Hopper puts out. So we're going to be putting more of this stuff out. Take these things, and if you want to find out anything else, more specifics about any issue of voter fraud, come to our meetings or meet up with us. We'll give you more details in you court cases, statutes. I'm not prepared to quote all the statutes or hand you copies, but you got a good start on how New Hampshire works or doesn't work when it comes to voter fraud in New Hampshire. Any questions? All right. Give them to us.
I met with
Give-
Dave Pierce.
Don't ever throw anything like that out.
I spoke to Dave Pierce.
Well, you can give them to the AG's office, you can give them to the secretary. In 2001, we had a joint House-Senate committee. Bob Clegg was on that, I think chaired it. And he told me, don't say anything until after Gardner testifies. You know, so Gardner's up there testifying. There is no voter fraud, and I'm sitting there with the stuff. So he got him to admit that if you were a non-resident, I mean, if you came in and voted, and within 2 years you haven't made yourself a resident, that's voter fraud. So since then, Gardner's position, like Obama's, has evolved into something else. I don't pay any attention to him whatsoever. He's irrelevant to this whole thing. It's the AG that has the right to prosecute, and Gardner is just like a feather in the wind. Yep, gentleman in the back. Thank you. You notice I had to alter it because I do these all the time. I'm all over the state. And I'm waiting for a subpoena from the AG's office. If the AG wants to know about voter fraud and he's giving a subpoena to James O'Keefe, wrong guy. Come here. And we'll go through your office. The problem is the veto. The governor vetoes it. Gene Shaheen did it like 3 times, and he's done it. He'll do it and now he's in a position to veto, you know, it doesn't matter. So we need a new governor to not veto it, and then we have to prosecute a couple. Just pick a couple. Like you go in a chicken coop and you ring a couple necks. The other chickens are paying attention. You know, you have to have some prosecutions of egregious, knowing voter fraud done by professionals, and we should start there. And then some of the guys that round up the college students would be great. Yes? Yep. Well, here's the thing. We have just purged, in case Democrats get a hold of this, we just purged our voters list of 165,000 people, something like that. We only purge, we go back 4 years and start purging there. So the Obama same-day crowd, they're still on our rolls. So there's a lot of empty names of people who have moved on that are ripe for anyone who wants to pick them. In New Hampshire, first come, first serve. Right? Plus, if you don't have photo ID, you can't be prosecuted hardly for voter fraud because we don't know who voted in your place. The only way we could catch you, if you registered in 2 places, you probably had to have a driver's license to register. So we know that you registered in Concord and then registered in Placetown. But if both those names are checked off, you can say, I wasn't even in town. Then they're both checked off. So because we don't have photo ID, we can say, well, you know, we have photo ID. You showed photo ID to an election official, and there's a check mark here and there. Oh, and in Hanover, we've had people who voted in person and by absentee. So when they dump the ballots out at 1 o'clock in the afternoon to count the absentee ballots, there they are. So I'm going to Willie Black. Oh, it must be an accident. Yeah, sure it is. Yep. Let me do one in the back here, Fred. Well, here's the job. All you need is to be accustomed to one of your polling places you know about. I mean, you guys on the ground know more than I would ever know by going to your town. Right? In my town, I know my non-resident voters because they've paid me with checks when I do work for them from Maryland, where they live. They have a summer home, and they come up here and they campaign for Dennis Kucinich, right? And they vote from their lake house in Deering. I know who they are. They know I know them. One of them was on our planning board. You know, his kids go to school in D.C. He and his wife work in D.C. I saw him interviewed on NBC News in D.C., and he gives me a check from down there. So I know. So I know that. You know your town. Get a hold of the returns and sit there with those. Go to the Republican Party and say, hey, can you sponsor me as a challenger for this election? And I'm going to be waiting. And if the Democrats know ahead of time that we're going to be doing this, it's a little more dangerous with sophisticated challengers to be doing this because we're going to catch them. I turned in a double voter from Ackworth before the state found him. That's the only other guy I know of that voted 2 places. You need to be trained. Let's try this one on. Let's try this one on for size. There's a fraternity in Durham, and 11 guys were arrested for dealing drugs out of there. 7 of them on the checklist. 3 of them I found had voted. They were on a checklist and voted, but when they were arrested, they were from out of state. So they voted for Obama, or somebody the last time around, and here they are arrested in 2011, late 2011, and they're given a driver's license from out of state. Well, the fraternity shut down. So there's still, those names are still going to be on that checklist. So we could be waiting in Durham for someone from that fraternity to walk in and say, 93 Main Street, Durham, that's a fraternity. And you go, challenge, and you have the guy right there. So, bingo. And the only way to be prepared is to be consistent, get a hold of these things. I've done it. I've caught them. I caught them in Ward 3, and that's not even really a bad ward. You go to the people who run for office and say, hey, any returns you get, Ovid's people, any returns you get, give them to me from my town. I would love to have them and bird dog ahead of time where these people are from. Depends how. In this case, Phyllis Woods did that with a first-class stamp, and we got them back, and I had them. Well, then you can't do that. So you have to be a little more sophisticated and ask for what you can get. And bird dog some of the arrest records. Like I go down to Durham. Here's the, all right, here we go. Here's the arrest logs for August to September 2005. Okay, has everybody who was arrested in Durham. And there are 34 pages in the arrest logs, 10 names per page, 340 names, 12 blank, 328 arrests, 149 not students, 173 UNH students were arrested, 18 non-resident out-of-states names on the checklist. That's a random sampling by the police, all right? So I got 18 guys right there that were arrested that had out-of-state driver's license. So I just wait, say I'm a challenger in Durham and then wait for that name to come up and say, who are you? Show me some ID. And you voted here before, then you have to have them prosecuted. Or the next thing is, I'm going to sue the state of New Hampshire because they're stealing my vote. I'm a registered Democrat. Right. They still count. Yeah. But you got their names. They're going to vote. Yeah. They're going to steal your vote. Until we have photo ID, they're going to steal our votes. But this is the opportunity. The Obama voters, the same-day registrants from the 2008 are still on the rolls. This is the time to catch them. So if you're diligent and you live in that town and you've got an access, you can be a ballot clerk, and you know this thing. I bring the statutes with me because a couple times I had a moderator take me aside and say, I'll have you arrested. And I say, great, let's read the law together to the police officer when you get him. And I've never been arrested. Yeah, that's the thing they fear the most is photo ID. So
You're
what?
Subject to the Voting Rights Act. We're not.
Yeah.
We don't have
Well, we are.
Well,
We got caught in a snowstorm or some stupid thing back in '64, and it's fraudulent. But but the main thing is document. When you see something, when somebody says, they vote, and then they ask the person at the election booth to say, what's the quickest way to Route 93? Go get a license plate number. Give me something tangible because it took us a while to scrounge this stuff up. But good stuff comes across a threshold all the time, and you never know which one's going to be the key. But I have enough stuff here to make the AG's office look like fools. And make it very dangerous for a professor to tell kids, here's 35 names. Those people are gone. That means all you do is walk in. No one's going to ask. That is what my biggest fear is for 2012. And we can catch them, and they know that's why I'm all over the state doing this. They know we're looking for them. So we need a little more sophisticated electorate till we get a real governor and a real AG. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you for what you
You bet.